Liz Teitz, who covers education for the San Antonio Express News, also from the San Antonio Express News. County government reporter Scott Huddleston, thanks for joining us for The Conversation Continues. Liz, you've jumped right into the middle of another round of chaos among one of our smaller independent school districts. Talk a little bit about where these districts go from here and what disadvantage they're at when it comes to students who may be at maybe one of the larger districts. Is it good or is it bad to be in a smaller, to be in a to be in a South San ISD or a Southside ISD or a Harlandale ISD as opposed to being in one of the mega districts, North Side or Northeast?
I think it very much depends on who you ask, just because there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Obviously, the larger districts have more resources. They have the ability to offer more things just because they have more students and a larger tax base. The smaller districts have really close-knit communities, and these schools are so deeply rooted in and such an important and integral part of the community. And I think that's probably what folks would tell you on the other side is that, these are kids who are going to the same schools that their parents, their grandparents went to, and who are, deeply rooted in that community. And they are struggling. Both sets of districts are struggling with declining enrollment, but obviously that hits you harder if you have 10,000 students than it does if you have 70,000 students.
Now, one of the things we talked with Ross Ramsey from the Texas Tribune about is the fact that school funding reform is coming down to the wire in the legislature. What are some of these, especially the smaller districts, what are they hoping to get out of the proposals of the legislature? Teacher pay raises, maybe an end to the Robin Hood program?
I think for the smaller school districts, what they're looking to see is just an increase in funding across the board, an increase in the basic allotment that they get for each student, as well as an increase in the weighting system that is used for students with higher needs. So English language learners, special education students, students whose the cost of education is higher to close gaps. And so they're looking to see an increase in that. From some of the larger districts, you are seeing conversation about recapture and the Robin Hood, and they'd obviously like to see a reprieve from that. And I think the other thing that we're really seeing a lot of conversation about is these teacher raises, where folks are kind of split between the Senate's insistence on a $5,000 teacher pay raise across the board versus more funding that districts would have more personal autonomy to dish out. Because what I've heard from some districts is that a $5,000 raise to teachers doesn't actually help solve the problems that they're facing, because then they'll have to raise everybody else's pay proportionally, and that's going to cost them more money because you can't have teachers making more than assistant principals. You've got coaches and other staff members. So,
Scott, over at the county, Judge Wolf, as we talked earlier in the show, has been very, very adamant about the change in the justice system, the change in the bail bond system. He is looking at making significant changes in the criminal justice system. How far will these go, in your opinion?
Well, he's proposing that the system rely entirely on city magistrates to do the jail booking for all of the inmates that come into the jail. And the district court judges on the criminal side are opposed to that, and they're saying the city magistrates are not qualified to do these caseloads. And in many cases, they say that people have had to be magistrated twice, and that's an inefficiency in the system. But the judge is a very strong advocate of therapeutic justice, and he believes that there are a lot of people, homeless people, poor people, people with mental issues who do not, belong in the jail and who should not be there. And there actually have been a couple of recent cases of people who died in the jail. But it remains to be seen whether this change would fully address that problem.
Now, he's gotten a lot of criticism and controversy over this proposal that was floated this week by the district attorney that we talked about on the TV show, just simply to not prosecute homeless people and mentally ill people who are charged with criminal trespass. Right. That came out of the blue. What's the story behind that?
Well, I think that that's related to the deaths of those two individuals. One of them died in December, and she had been there since July. And I believe that she had a $300 bond, and usually you would have to post 10% of that, like a $30 bail. She couldn't afford that. She died of natural causes, but it turns out that she had refused effort. They wanted to try to give her a personal recognizance bond, but she had refused that. So it was kind of like one of those cases, well, does changing the system, would that have saved her life? And I don't know the answer to that question. It's very complicated.
Scott Huddleston, county government reporter for the San Antonio Express News. Liz Teitz covers education for the San Antonio Express News. Thanks for joining us on The Conversation Continues.